Welcome to our podcast all about the It Takes a Village philosophy. The focus of our talk today is the contemporary sociology of Australian families, exploring how parenting styles impact children's development, how family structure are shifting, and how we as early childhood teachers can support diverse communities. I'm joined today by my wonderful co-host Hastami, Madhvi, and Karamveer. Welcome everyone. It is great to have you here.
Thank you, Aulliya. I'm looking forward to today's discussion because there have been many changes in the family over time, and sociology offers insight into them.
Thank you. I believe the topic is highly relevant to me because Australian families today differ greatly from those of the past.
Happy to be here. I think each family is unique, and it is fascinating to note the impact that society has had on family life.
So the question is, what is a family? Traditionally, the family was defined only in terms of biological relationship, parents, children, and marriage. But the modern view of sociology is different. Today, family is about the values people share, such as love, care, trust, and deep commitment. It's about who shows up for you. People don't have to be biologically related to be a true family. As Giddens and Sutton 2021 suggests, having loving, supportive relationship and a sense of belonging is what truly constitutes a family.
I completely agree. I believe that one of the greatest changes in society is that families are not recognized by a biological template, but by the relationship people build, placing a higher value on love, respect, and continuous support.
That's exactly right. There are numerous types of families in Australia today. While the nuclear family remains common, according to the Australian Institute of Family Studies 2022, these changes are due to migration, shifting gender roles, higher level of women's employment, and shifting attitudes towards marriage, divorce, and relationship. This diversity signals a more accepting Australian society that embraces a variety of ways of living and raising children.
While the nature and quality of the home environment can positively impact child outcomes, children can thrive in any family when they receive emotional support, stability, care, and positive guidance from the adults in their lives, as mentioned in the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare 2023.
This is true, especially when we observe the multiculturalism in Australia. In the same way, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities have a very strong sense of kinship with one another, and caring for children is sometimes delegated across family and community members.
This leads us directly to parenting styles. According to developmental psychologist Diana Bumrin, there are three parenting styles: authoritative, authoritarian, and permissive. Authoritative parents combine warm communication and clear rules. This parenting style has been found in many studies to be correlated with positive outcomes. As Baumrin 1966 suggests, authoritarian parents are more likely to emphasize discipline and obedience, and permissive parents are more likely to be caring and supportive, but to put fewer restraint on the child's behavior.
According to Baxter and Smart 2021, another important point to note is that parenting does not place in vacuum. Factors such as work schedules, financial pressures, childcare, and access to community services are among the social and economic influences can impact parents' time and energy for their children.
Yes, there are several issues due to the high cost of housing, living, and childcare. Many families can feel under financial strain. As Touch et al. 2022 noted, work life has emerged as another major concern, particularly for parents balancing family and work responsibilities. Such pressures can result in stress, reinforcing the need for a supportive family and community environment.
I believe gender roles have changed in modern times. Many couples share parental and household duties equally, rather than in the previous generation. Research by Gilding and Gregory 2020, however, indicates that in many households, women still contribute more to unpaid household work, suggesting that gender equality remains an ongoing challenge.
This is particularly important for future educators as children have a variety of family backgrounds. We need to make no assumptions and respect each child's family. Have a sense of belonging, being accepted, and being included within their community helps children feel confident.
Absolutely. Today's families in Australia are dynamic and constantly evolving. Ultimately, love, stability, and positive relationships are what drives children's well being, regardless of their family structure. By understanding this diversity, we as teachers can build more inclusive environments. We have looked at how Australian families have changed and the challenge they deal with. Now, how can theories help us understand these complicated experiences? Hastami, can you start off with Bronfenbrenner? Many students are familiar with the circles, but the theory changed a lot before he passed away, right?
Yes, Aulliya, we always see those neat textbook circles, micro, meso, exo, and macro that Yuri Bronfenbrenner came up with in 1979. But in 2006, he and Mary Morris developed this into the bioecological model, which centers on the PPCT framework, process, person, context, and time. The key development is proximal process, which means children grow the best through consistent and face-to-face interaction with people, objects, and symbols in the environment.
Oh, that is a massive distinction, Hastami. So it's less about where the child is and more about the quality of what they are doing there.
Exactly, Karamveer. It's a two-way street. This is what Anthony 2022 argues, highlighting Bronfenbrenner's concept of bidirectionality. The child does not simply absorb the environment. Instead, their own traits, temperaments, and action also influence how environment reacts to them.
Let's look at this through a critical perspective. When an early childhood teacher observes a child experiences highly aggressive behavior or struggling to get along with peers, a surface level approach might apply, blame the family, or focus on the child internal psychology. In what ways does the PPCT model provide a different framework to understand these behaviors?
Great question, Madhvi. This idea makes us consider how person and process interact as explained by Bronfenbrenner and Morris 2006. For example, a child may have an active, emotionally reactive temperament, which is a person characteristic. But this trait does not decide their future. In fact, a recent review by Tong and An 2024 explained that the social outcome depends on the proximal processes, such as how peers, parents, and teachers respond to that reactivity.
So, if a teacher responds with rigid and harsh disciplinary actions, it triggers a negative feedback loop. But if a teacher co regulates with the child learns to manage emotion, right?
That's correct, Aulia. Additionally, it is important to consider the mesosystem, which refers to connections among child's microsystem, like their home and the early childhood education center. Take a look at what happens when a child's parents are going through a high conflict divorce. If there is a total lack of communication between the home and the center, the child may experience a severe disconnect in their everyday life. But here's the crucial point. Bronfenbrenner emphasizes that the behavioral disruption we see are not caused by the child. Instead, as Touch and his colleagues analyze in their review of Bronfenbrenner's work, these behaviors simply reflect a disrupted mesosystem. This is by Bronfenbrenner 1979 as cited in Touch et al. 2022.
That makes total sense. It also helps us rethink the idea of culture. Often, we view culture as a distant, abstract macro system. Shouldn't we be paying closer attention to it? How does culture show up in the daily interactions between a teacher and children?
In reality, culture is embedded within the daily proximal processes of the microsystem. For teachers, their cultural background actively shapes the classroom environment. As scholars like Velas Agosto et al. 2017 argue that culture influences communication style, the ideal concept of care, and the selection of activities for children.
How do the broader structures like the exosystem and macrosystem influence the daily realities of children and families?
This is where the framework becomes a powerful tool for analyzing the structure. As discussed by Touch et al. 2022, the exosystem includes environment that the child does not experience directly, but still have a strong impact. For example, a parent's workplace policy can make a big difference. If a mother does not have paid parental leave or has unpredictable work shift, her stress level may increase significantly. Darling 2007 observed that parental exhaustion can lower the quality of the interaction at home. As a result, it affects the child's language and emotional development.
That is a great point, Hastami. This happens often in community funding when local government zoning laws or budget cuts, known as ecosystem forces, lead to the closure of community parks or the reduction of early intervention services. Families can end up feeling isolated. Now, let us connect this to Maslow's theory of hierarchy of needs. Madhvi, how does Maslow's theory help us better understand children's learning and development in early childhood education?
Thanks, Aulliya. While Bronfenbrenner explains where children's development is influenced, Maslow helps explain what children need to develop successfully. Maslow's hierarchy of needs suggests that children must have their basic needs met before they can fully engage in learning and reach their potential. These needs progress from physiological needs such as food, water, and sleep, to safety, love, belonging, esteem, and finally self actualization by Maslow 1943, as cited in Booth 2024.
So, is it fair to say it's like a domino effect? If a child comes to preschool hungry, anxious, or feeling unsafe, they are more focused on coping than learning, is what Maslow theory suggests.
Exactly. Research from the Center on the Developing Child at Howard University 2021 shows that children learn best when they experience safe, stable, and nurturing relationships. When their basic needs are unmet, it can affect their brain development, emotional regulation, and ability to learn.
That connects well with Bronfenbrenner framework. If family stress or financial hardship affect a child's basic needs, then those wider environments also influence learning.
Exactly. That's why both theories complement each other. Bronfenbrenner helps us understand the environmental influences, while Maslow explains how those influences affect children's ability to develop and learn. For example, if a family is experiencing housing insecurity or financial stress, a child's need for safety and security may not be fully met, making it more difficult for them to concentrate and participate in learning. Research by Yoshikawa et al. 2012 found that poverty and family stress can negatively affect children's cognitive development, emotional well being, and school readiness. This highlights why educators need to understand children's family circumstances rather than making assumptions about their behavior.
That's a really interesting perspective, Madhvi. But does Maslow's theory apply equally to children from all cultural backgrounds?
Not always. While Maslow theory is widely used, researchers argues that it mainly reflects Western values in which independence and individual achievement are highly valued by Nevis 1983. However, for many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, well being is closely connected to kinship, country, culture, and community. Similarly, many Asian, African, and Middle Eastern cultures place greater importance on family and collective well being than individual success by Marcus and Kitayama 1991.
So, educators need to understand children's cultural background instead of assuming every child develops in the same way.
Exactly. That's why the Early Years Learning Framework version 2.0 encourages educators to value children's cultural identities and create learning environments that respect diverse ways of belonging and learning. 2022.
Thank you for raising that, Madhvi. Your discussion highlight that understanding children's need and the environment they grow up in is only part of effective early childhood practice. The real challenge for educators is applying these theories in ways that support every child and family with respect, inclusion, and cultural responsiveness. As we have talked about the diversity of Australian families and why it matters in early childhood education, now let's turn our attention to the role of educators. Karamveer, based on today's discussion, what do you think early childhood teachers can do to create inclusive and supportive partnership with children and families from diverse backgrounds?
Thank you, Alia. After exploring the contemporary sociology of Australian families, I have realized that being an effective early childhood teacher is about more than planning learning activities. It's about building respectful partnerships with children, families, and communities while recognizing that every family is unique. Australian families are diverse, bringing different cultures, languages, and experiences that enrich children learning, as according to AIFS 2024. The EYLF version 2 reminds us that families are children's first teachers. Additionally, Quality Area 6 of National Quality Standard states that we need to work together with families to support children's well-being and inclusion, as according to Australian Children's Education and Care Quality Authority 2023.
I completely agree, Karamveer. I think strong partnerships are built through everyday interactions. When educators genuinely listen to families and make them feel welcome and valued, it creates trust. That sense of trust helps children feel safe, supported, and connected between home and the early learning environment. But how can educators build strong, authentic partnership with families in everyday practice?
That's a great question, Hastami. Building strong partnerships means more than sharing daily updates. Educators should learn about each family's culture, language, and traditions by inviting them to share stories, music, celebrations, or home languages in the classroom. These experiences help children develop positive identities and respect for diversity. According to research by Douglas 2019, authentic family engagement strengthens children learning, confidence, and well being by creating consistency between home and early childhood settings.
That sounds wonderful. I also believe inclusive practice starts with the educator. We all have our own beliefs and experiences. So, regularly reflecting on our teaching helps us recognize bias, remain open to different perspectives, and ensure every child and family feels respected, included, and valued. How important is reflection in making sure practice remains inclusive?
Reflection is absolutely essential. Every educator brings personal beliefs and unconscious biases into their practice, which can influence interactions with children and families. The EYLF version 2 identifies critical reflection as an essential professional practice that helps educators promote equity and inclusion, according to Australian Government Department of Education 2022. By using strength-based approaches, educators recognize each family's knowledge and experiences while continually improving their cultural responsiveness and professional practice.
Along with reflection, ethics must also play an important role. I'm particularly interested in how ethical duty to promote social justice influences those first crucial interaction with diverse communities. How do you see that play out in practice?
The foundation of high quality early childhood education is ethical practice. The Early Childhood Australia Code of Ethics guides educators to build respectful, equitable, and professional relationships. According to Early Childhood Australia 2016, educators should respect every family, protect children's rights, and promote inclusion and social justice. Inclusive practices such as using diverse books, bilingual resources, and incorporating Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives help every child and family feel respected and valued and foster a sense of belongingness.
I agree that ethical and inclusive practice is essential. However, research shows that educators can face challenges such as language barriers, cultural differences, and limited family participation. The EYLF Version 2.0 highlights that respectful partnerships and open communication are key to overcoming these challenges. According to Australian Government Department of Education 2022, Karamveer, what practical strategies can educators use to respond professionally and build strong partnership with all families?
That's a very realistic question because challenges are also part of professional practice. However, these challenges can be addressed through empathy, flexibility, and collaboration. Strategies such as translated communication, interpreters, digital platform, flexible meeting times, and partnerships with community and health services help support families. Moreover, Epstein's framework of school, family, and community partnerships highlights that children's learning and well being are strengthened when educators, families, and wider community work together through respectful communication, shared responsibility, and meaningful partnerships, according to Epstein et al. 2019.
It does take a village to raise children. As we conclude today's discussion, Karamfir, what is your final reflection on this topic as a future early childhood teacher?
Certainly, this topic has reinforced my understanding that the role of an early childhood teacher extends beyond teaching. It is about creating inclusive environments where every child and family feels respected, valued, and safe. Through ethical practice, critical reflection, and culturally responsive partnerships, educators can promote children's holistic development, equity, and lifelong learning.
Beautifully said, Karamfir. And a huge thank you to you, Hastami and Madhvi. And a special thank you to our listeners for turning in to It Takes a Village. We hope this discussion has provided a valuable insight into Australian families and the important role of early childhood educators in creating inclusive and respectful partnerships. Thank you for joining us. Take care and goodbye.